Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping in at just one single amazing chapter from the classic, The Railway Children. It's a story where trying to do a good thing leads to a really hard lesson, and where a secret worry sparks an absolutely incredible adventure.
We're going to follow a young girl named Bobby who decides to fix a very grown-up problem using a child's logic. And what unfolds is this fantastic story about pride, about love, and about the totally unexpected things that can happen when you break the rules for what feels like all the right reasons.
So our story kicks off in a pretty surprising place. Not with a big celebration, but with the really uncomfortable fallout from the children's last well-intentioned adventure. Okay, so picture this. The children had asked a kind old gentleman on the railway for some help when their mother was sick. They come back with all these wonderful things, totally expecting to be praised as heroes, but instead of getting a thank you, they walk right into their mother's unexpected fury.
And you gotta notice the really crucial distinction their mother makes here. Her anger wasn't about the kindness they got. It was the fact that her own kids went to a stranger and, well, in her mind, they were begging. For her, this was a deeply personal thing about family pride.
And so, just like that, a brand new, ironclad rule is laid down. It's a tough moment, for sure. It teaches the children this really complex lesson about poverty, pride, and keeping your family's struggles private. The very next day, things get even more complicated. It's Bobby's 12th birthday, but all of her happiness is completely clouded by this secret worry she just can't shake. These words, which her mother muttered when she had a fever, are just haunting Bobby. The thought of this huge doctor's bill is eating her up inside. So in this moment of quiet determination, she actually intercepts the doctor, hoping she can figure out a solution all by herself.
But despite all this worry hanging in the air, her family creates this just magical celebration. The gifts aren't fancy or expensive, but they are absolutely overflowing with thought and love. The real showstopper is this incredible map of their railway, made entirely out of flowers they gathered.
Then comes the big gift from her brother Peter, his most prized possession, a toy steam engine, and it's filled with sweets. Bobby is just overwhelmed until he clarifies, oh no, the gift is just the candy, not the engine itself. After a little flicker of disappointment, he offers to let her go halves on the engine with him, a gesture that just perfectly mends the whole moment. But the day ends on this really quiet, sad note. Bobby goes downstairs and finds her mother all alone, just crying with her head on the table. And right here, Bobby makes a really mature decision. Instead of running in, she respects her mother's privacy. She just backs away, pretending she saw nothing at all. And that moment, seeing her mother's hidden pain, it just galvanizes Bobby. It strengthens her resolve. She decides she has to take matters into her own hands and fix at least one thing for her family. She doesn't try to tackle the doctor's bill. That's way too big. Instead, she focuses on something real, something tangible that represents happiness. Bobby decides she is going to get Peter's broken toy engine fixed. After all, she owns half of it now, and she's determined to make it whole again for him. Her plan is just so beautifully simple, born from this pure, childlike trust she has in the kindness of the people who work on the railway. She's just going to go straight to an expert, a real engineer, and ask for help. What could possibly go wrong? Well, as you can probably guess, this very straightforward mission is about to take a very unexpected and very, very noisy detour. She sneaks down to the tracks and gets closer to a real steam engine than she ever has in her life. It is enormous, it's loud, and she feels, in her own words, very small indeed, and somehow very soft. She tries to call out, "If you please, Mr. Engineer," but her little voice is just completely swallowed up by the hissing steam and the clanking of the engine. The crew, they can't see her, they can't hear her, she's invisible. So, in this moment of pure desperation, she climbs up into the cab to get their attention. But just as she scrambles aboard, stumbling right into the coal, the driver starts the engine, completely unaware she's there. The train starts to move. Can you just imagine the driver's face when he finally turns around and sees this tearful, coal-dusted little girl standing right there? His shock is just perfectly captured in this fantastic line. Bobby, of course, is absolutely terrified. She is now an accidental stowaway, an engine burglar. But here's where the story takes this wonderful turn. What begins in total panic quickly transforms into a moment of incredible learning and, believe it or not, surprising friendship.
The two men, Bill and Jim, they get over their shock really fast. They're not angry, they're actually intrigued.
They're charmed by her earnest little plea to fix the toy engine, and so they start showing her how their massive engine actually works, starting with this brass wheel called the injector. So her crash course in engineering continues. Bill shows her the automatic brake, explaining how one tiny handle can bring the entire massive train to a screeching halt. For Bobby, this is just mind-blowing. It's a lesson in what he calls the power of science.
And through it all, her courage, her polite and earnest nature, Bobby just completely wins them over. They promise they'll get the toy engine fixed by a relative and make sure she gets home safely. She's no longer a burglar, she's a friend.
So Bobby returns home, mission accomplished. She has a perfectly mended toy for Peter, but she also has 2 new friends and a mind that is just buzzing with all this new technical knowledge. She proudly tells her siblings the entire story of how she became an engine burglar.
You know, Bobby broke her mother's brand new rule. She asked strangers for help, but she didn't do it for herself. She did it out of love for her brother and this deep desire to bring just a little bit of happiness back to her family. Her adventure really reminds us that sometimes the most courageous and loving things we do require bending the rules, just a little bit.